Okay, so welcome. Thank you for being here. Today's masterclass, I'm going to talk about how we cultivate courage, also known as how to overcome self-doubt. And I was thinking about it, I'm like, and I guess you could call it how to build confidence. So it's kind of all of these topics wrapped up into one. I'm going to go through it step by step. In previous master classes, a lot of times the steps that I offer are, I guess, tangible or like actual things that you're doing, or maybe an activity or a behavior. This is more conceptual in terms of like, I'm going to talk to you about why we have self-doubt, kind of what is creating it and how we can overcome it. But this is one of those ones that's pretty much purely mindset. So just take that into consideration as we go through the slides. So to understand courage, I think we have to first talk about and understand fear, and more specifically, self-doubt. So let's talk about what self-doubt is and kind of what's going on when we experience it. So first of all, the first thing to know is like when we strive for an impossible goal, right? Or something different, something that we haven't done before, it should feel scary, right? You should expect to feel self-doubt. It's a very normal and healthy reaction because usually, like I said, you're attempting to do something you haven't done before. And if you've heard me use this term before, primitive brain, it's the part of our brain that has always been developed, right? So we've had this primitive brain right from the time that we were created, or however you want to think about the human evolution. And it was designed to keep us safe. Okay. And so we've carried that part of our brain with us into this modern world. And it hasn't evolved to know the difference between being chased by a predator and doing something new. Okay. So it sees an impossible goal or a dream as danger. So it's going to send you a whole bunch of signals that tells you that whatever you're attempting to do is bad, right? That there is danger, and it will create terrible feelings, right, in your body. And what happens for most of us is this signals like something has gone wrong. Okay. But we want to start becoming aware of this as simply just, a biological response that is natural, but no longer necessary. Okay. Nothing has gone wrong. And in fact, it just means you're exactly where you need to be. Okay. And the brain is just trying to protect you. Second, self-doubt is a feeling. Okay. So it is created not by the circumstance, not by what it is you're attempting to do or learn, but by the thoughts that you have about that thing, right? And because the primitive brain is going to kick in and try to protect you, it's going to offer negative thoughts, right? It's going to say, this is bad, this is dangerous, okay? When you think, oh no, I might not be able to do this, or you have thoughts that you could fail, or that this is scary, you've never done it before, those thoughts create a feeling of self-doubt in you. And first, before I go on to say more about that, it's important to understand that that feeling of self-doubt is triggered by your thought. You don't experience self-doubt because of a history of failure, for example. So a lot of people will say, well, I can't do it, or I don't think I can do it because, I've failed each time I've tried something in the past. Self-doubt is not created by action or inaction. It is created by our thoughts about ourselves and what is possible. Okay, so you don't create self-doubt by failing over and over. It's not a result of what you do or don't do. Self-doubt actually determines what you do because it's a feeling. And if we remember, like, a thought creates a feeling in our body, and feelings determine the actions we take or don't take. So when we feel self-doubt, it will determine what action we take or not take. And because it's a, quote unquote, a negative feeling, it typically discourages action, right? Rather than inspires it. And if you've ever had thoughts like, I'll never figure this out, or I really suck at this, you probably have not felt inspired to take action towards that thing.
Sorry, Lindsay. So that was like a bomb dropping. So I just want to ask, is that okay if I ask a question? So it's the start of the process, not the end of the process, self-doubt.
Right. Now, when you start taking action, even when you feel self-doubt, right? And you start building up, say, your list of achievements, if you will, it is not those achievements, and I may say this later, I don't know in the presentation, I can't remember, but it's not those achievements that build your confidence. It's your thoughts about yourself and your ability to achieve. Now, and I think I do say this later, so apologies if I repeat it, but we know this to be true because there are people who are extremely successful and still have a shit view of themselves. Right? Still doubt themselves all the time. We also know there's those people out there that we think have completely lost their minds because they fail over and over again, and yet they still think they're great. Right? Think about that. And I love this story, actually. Do you remember the Olympic ski jumper who was like, he wasn't an athlete. He'd never ski jumped before. He just decided he wanted to do it. He was terrible at it. He was terrible. And he kept doing it over and over. And people were like, stop, like you're done, right? But he thought he was fantastic. He had this goal. He was going to do it. And he did it. He ended up in the Olympics. So it's just to know that your self-doubt is truly coming from your thoughts about yourself, not the achievements you've had or not.
Right. And then the action piece is the key part of it, right? Because if you're staying stuck in that self-doubt, then you're not necessarily taking the actions, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And no problem. Like as we go on, I hope, and I think that will become clearer. Okay. So if we jump back and say, since self-doubt is a feeling, right? Created by negative thoughts, usually triggered by your primitive brain, not your authentic self. Always remember that authentic self does not feel fear, right? Your authentic self always tapped into your desire, what you want, and what you know you can achieve. So negative, it's a feeling created by a negative thought triggered by your primitive brain. But like we were just talking about, it is up to you to decide to believe them or not. Right? So if you think about it, and I just said this, like we all know people that no matter how many times they fail, they still think they can do something, right? So thoughts are optional always. So if you're having thoughts that create a feeling of self-doubt, you get to choose if you want to continue believing them or not. Okay. So let's talk about how then we can overcome self-doubt, cultivate courage, cultivate confidence. So the first thing is, like I said in the beginning, to expect it. Just expect self-doubt. Stop expecting that it's going to go away. No matter how many achievements you have, it will always arise. Now, for some people, more intense than others, but even Lisa, I can't remember did you certify at LCS?
Yeah.
Yeah. So even Brooke Castillo, who Catherine runs our school where, we certified as life coaches, runs a $50 million business right now. Goal is to run a $100 million business. Like she will talk about how every time she has a new idea, her brain will be like, oh no, that's not going to work.
Right.
And her response is really like, really? We're still doing this? Right. After everything I've done and created, we're still doing this. It's like, yes, we're still doing this because you're still human. You still have a human brain. You're not getting rid of that part. So just start to expect it and be like, welcome. It's here. It should be here. Right. And as soon as you think about something you want to achieve that is different, just know you will immediately be followed by pushback, right? They're
Right.
just thoughts, though. They're not facts. Your brain is never offering you facts,
I
right?
love that you call it pushback because that's
Yeah.
exactly what it is. And that's exactly the action that gets taken.
Yeah. Yes. And then we resist and push back, right? So
Yeah.
you just don't have to accept them. You can be like, hey, you're here and thanks for being here, but I don't accept you. I don't accept you, right? These thoughts aren't going to serve me. So decide, that's the step number 2. Decide what you want to believe and decide whether you want to believe you are not capable. Okay. So I don't think, like, if you're here and if you're watching the replay, I don't think you want to believe that you can't be successful, you can't be strong, you can't be rich, whatever it is that your goal is, right? So there's no real upside to believing it, except that, remember, the drive will be strong to stay comfortable and stay safe. So the primitive brain is not only pushing back in a way that says this is dangerous, it's offering, like, you will get feelings of relief and comfort when you relax into that and be like, you're right, let's just stay where we are, right? So acknowledge the self-doubt, understand it's your primitive brain, and then decide to believe something different. Identify what it is you want to believe, right? Make it useful, make it inspiring, right? Choose something that drives action, motivates change. So one way you can do this is to think of something you're really confident in and what your thought about it is, and then simply just apply it to the new situation. Now, I'm going to use another example of Brooks because I was listening to her podcast the other day and I just thought this was such a good one, where she's like, when people tell her, well, I haven't achieved anything, there's nothing I know that I'm so confident in that I just know 100% I can do it. And she's like, well, can you hold and drink a glass of water? Right? And if you think about it that way, she talks about that in the way that, like, we never think about picking up this glass, right? We don't think about it. We just go and we do it without questioning ourselves. And it doesn't even always work out, right? Sometimes you drop the glass. Sometimes you knock it over. Sometimes as you're going to drink from the glass, it spills, like, it comes running down your face. But you don't start thinking to yourself, God, I suck, I can't drink a glass of water.
Sometimes I do.
But next time you go to drink that glass of water, there isn't a flood of fear that's like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. Okay, brace yourself, Lisa. You got to pick that glass up,
You're going to embarrass yourself at the restaurant again,
yeah.
Lisa.
So kind of think of it that way. Like, even though you're failing sometimes when you pick up this glass, you don't necessarily overthink it and think twice about it next time you go. It's just like, oh shit, what was wrong with me today? That's how you want to start thinking about the failures you have as you're going for your achievements. It's like, I learned something, or today was just an off day. Do not use it as an excuse or a reason to quit. Right? It's just a failure. It's just something that you plan to turn out one way and it did something different. So learn from it, but don't start to overthink it every time you go to try the next thing that you're going to do. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. Practice believing it. And honestly, it sounds so simple and cheesy. Like, when I say practice believing it, I literally mean choose your belief and then start saying it out loud, repeating it over in your head, like walking around your house, repeating it. Like, you just have to practice it literally so that it starts to become much more of a natural habit, if you will, in your brain. So practice believing it, but don't wait to take action. Okay? You're practicing and taking action at the same time. So I can't stress this enough, because taking action while feeling self-doubt and fear will build the tolerance to the negative feeling that it gives you in your body. It also shows your brain that there's nothing to fear in terms of like death or like imminent injury, right? The worst thing that's going to happen from attempting almost anything. The ski jumping example now might not have been the best thing because he could have snapped his neck and died. But the worst thing that's going to happen for most of us in achieving, going after our big dreams is a negative feeling, right? It's this feeling of rejection or of failure, disappointment, all of these things. So if you can build your tolerance to those feelings and still take action, that's the key. That's how you get to where you're going, as opposed to feeling a negative feeling and either allowing it to shut you down or completely stop you, right? Like when I say shut down, it's like maybe for the afternoon, like you have to go lie down in bed or, you know, process the feeling. And completely quit would be like, yeah, you've decided you're not going to go after your goal. So because your brain doesn't know that these things aren't going to kill you, you want to start giving it proof. You want to be like, look, see, we feel fear right now. We feel self-doubt. I'm going to do this thing anyways. I'm going to send that email. I'm going to get up in front of that group and speak, whatever it is. And I'm going to show you we don't die. With every obstacle, we have the choice to either doubt ourselves or to learn and evolve. So I think that's been the biggest learning for me, is that I can either sit here and doubt myself and stay where I am, or I can choose to feel all of those things and take action. Your success or not will largely be dependent then upon your willingness to overcome self-doubt, or more simply put, your willingness to let go of the very comfortable, familiar actions that you're currently taking. There is a great, I'm not going to get this quote right, unless I wrote it down, because I'm just thinking of it right now. His name's like Robert something, but he said something along the lines of like, our biggest obstacle isn't like the impossible goal that we have. It's a clearer path to a lesser goal. Right? So it's like, you already know what you're doing in this place you're in, right? You have the direction. It's maybe even, you might even be on autopilot in whatever you're doing, in your relationship, in your job, like whatever space of your life we're talking about. And so what deters us is not necessarily like all the obstacles this way. It's that there's such a clear path to just the lesser goal, the smaller, easier, staying safe. And that really resonated with me. So I thought I'd share that.
That's great. Took me a second to digest that.
I know, right? You just have to, yeah. So a clearer path to a lesser goal. I was like, oh shoot. That's so
a well-worn path, right? It's so
yeah. Okay, so if you're willing to give up that safe option, right, that comfort of staying where you are, it will require a willingness to repeatedly try and fail until you increase your ability, right? So try, fail, try again, fail, try again, succeed, start all over again, right? And also this concept of like not putting a limit on the number of times you're willing to try, right? So many people would be like, oh, I've tried 3 different things. They haven't worked. This must not be for me, and giving up. It's like, do you have a commitment to just keep trying until you find the path to getting to where you go, right? Or getting to where you want to go. That wasn't even English when I said it, bro. So I guess it's like, just notice this and ask yourself, like, what are the number of attempts you're willing to make, right? Even if it feels really terrible every time you make the attempt, do you have a limit? And would it be worth it to you to not have a limit, to say, I'm going to keep going until I achieve what it is I'm going to achieve? Now, this is different than staying on a path that clearly isn't working. So we have to continually learn. We can't just like I've seen people in my life. I have somebody in my life that has been doing this for 20 years, right? He's trying to run a business, but he's stayed on the same path, losing money over and over and over again, doing what he's doing. But he's so like, he's laser focused, but on this one path of getting to where he wants to go. And probably he's failed so many times, but not learned from that failure. So kept on the same path, and he just keeps hitting a wall. That's different, right? We want to have the flexibility to learn from what isn't working and be okay with saying, okay, I thought this was the path to getting there, but I'm going to try this one. So remember that it's okay to have flexibility. It's okay if the how doesn't turn out to be exactly what you thought it was. That's part of the process, is being open to that and flexible. Okay, so the last thing, we just have a couple more minutes. I just want to leave you with an activity that I'm working on right now myself, and that I just think it seems so simple, but it's really impactful. And I just want you to consider making a list of all of your achievements. And again, Lisa, this is not Brooke's idea, but she shared it in one of her podcasts. Make a list of all your achievements from the time you were a very young child. You can probably go back to age 5 or 6. If you can go back earlier, great. I don't have many memories before then. And write them all down. And she talks about things as small as like learning to tie your shoe, all the way up to maybe like a graduate degree you got, or a business you started, or maybe whatever, all of your achievements, and continually go back to that list and add as you come up with them. And it's important to remember that the purpose of this is not that the accomplishments will make you feel confident, as we talked about, but how you think about them will. Right? So also notice if you're discounting things and not wanting to put them on the list because you're like, oh, that doesn't really count. Put everything on there and start to see them as like a growth and evolvement of the human that you were and have become, and to show your brain, right, that you have already achieved many things in your life, and that you can use that to build courage and build confidence to take the next step in whatever it is that you're doing. So that is what I have for you today. I'm going to stop recording, say goodbye to the people that are watching the replay. I will see you next week at the same time, and I will stay on to talk to those of you that are here.